All right, so that's what this hip does. So once all the range of motion is exhausted, we have the paddle into the water. Now what are we gonna do, okay? So now we're down here, we have our weight on the paddle. We have this leg that's down here, should be loaded up, ready to go, okay? So as soon as we start our stroke, two things are gonna happen, okay? So this leg is gonna start extending it. You're gonna be kicking into the boat, okay? And by kicking into the boat, you're gonna help yourself stand back up again, okay? So you're pressing against the boat, you're simultaneously moving the boat forward and pushing yourself back up. Okay, this is probably the easiest part about using your legs to grasp, okay? Really just kicking into the boat, not like violently like that, but thoughtfully, okay? Allowing yourself to come up. That pressure that you push into the ground is gonna create lots of tension and it's gonna create a stabilizing effect, right? You're gonna feel a lot more stable when you're pressing into the boat like that, okay? So by pressing into the boat, this leg is gonna be solid. You're gonna feel solid, you're gonna feel really stable, okay? Now, that's part one. Part two. So remember, this hip is gonna be swiveled back, right? Now, when we start driving with this leg, what's gonna happen is this hip is going to swivel forward. It's gonna swivel forward, it's gonna help us derotate, okay? Again, this hip, this shoulder are connected, right? So if this hip starts swiveling forward, then my shoulder is gonna come right back, okay? This is gonna help you generate that extra little bit of rotational force, all right? Okay. Any questions so far about anything that we've gone over? No? All clear? Okay. Alrighty, so all that force that you generate from your hips, right, while you're taking your stroke, it's gonna come up through the body and then through the arms, right? Just like that. So what we want to think about is we want to think about that sequencing. Okay, this is the final ingredient of how to use your legs. So we don't want to start by using our arms and then using our legs, right? That will be equivalent of a weightlifter going up to the bar and then trying to do that and then doing this. You won't be able to get very far, let me tell you, if you use your arms like that, right? So we want to think about the sequencing, okay? The sequencing is very important. We want to think about initiating with the legs. So when we have our paddle buried and we're starting to pull, we want to think about the first thing to move, right, is this. It's this movement with our legs. And then the paddle moves, right? So legs first, then torso, then shoulders, then arms come back. That's what we want to think about, okay? That way, we can, because at the front of the stroke, right, this is when the boat has the most inertia, right? Inertia is like, you know, you guys know what inertia is? Right? Is that how you say it in Mandarin? Okay.
I think you know that.
Yes, I don't know physics terms in Mandarin, okay? Okay. So it has that inertia, right? So this is when the boat is going at its slowest, and therefore we have to produce the most force to re-accelerate the boat, right? So we want to use our biggest, most powerful muscles at the front, right, to initiate, right? And then as we take our stroke, right, that boat speed starts to pick up, right? There's less inertia, right? And then we can kind of follow through and guide with our arms. Right? Now, in reality, everything is supposed to be moving together, but when we're trying to learn it, we should think about these move first, right? Because if you don't think like that, then the arms are going to move first, right? So it's kind of we're overcompensating, right? So, sequencing, right? Legs, then torso, then shoulders, and then arms, right? Now, same thing. So that was the pull phase. Right? The sequencing also applies to the recovery as well when we're reaching forward. okay? The reason being is because the recovery phase, right? It's called the recovery phase for a reason, right? We want to be recovering as much as possible in between strokes, right? Because when we have our palate out of the water, we're nice and upright, feels good, least amount of stress on our joints, on our muscles. Okay, we need to take that split second of time, as much as possible to, recover between strokes, right? And same thing when we go forward. We don't want to waste too much energy going forward, because then that takes away from energy that we could be putting into the water to actually go faster, right? Does that make sense? So we want to recover a certain way in order to maximize that energy saving benefit, right? So when we're going forward again, right? Same thing. We want to be thinking about initiating that recovery from down here. And then the arms are the last thing to move. The arms are the last thing to completely lock out, right? So when we're here, right, the arm is going to be bent, okay? Wrist up here is kind of rotated. I'm going to start to think about recovering forward by pushing this hip back, right? And when the hip comes back, then the torso comes around. When the torso comes around, then the shoulders come around, right? And everything starts down here, right? Because we're trying to use the big muscles that can withstand a lot of force. It can take a big beating to do most of the grunt work, right? So this down here moves first, and that allows us to move these at the end, right until the very end, okay? So it's gonna be legs, hips, torso, shoulders, and then last thing to fully extend is the arms, right? So how I like to think about it is kind of like, hopefully, I don't know if you guys are too old for this, but beer pong, right? Or throwing darts, let's just say throwing darts. It might be more applicable to you guys, right? So when we're throwing darts, right, we kind of want to be doing that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like how we want our bottom arm to be when we're recovering, right? So that bottom arm, right, just imagine I'm playing darts and also paddling at the same time, okay? So that bottom arm, right, we shouldn't be locking it out right from the recovery, okay? Because when it's out here, this is a big moment arm. It's a lot of energy wasted. So if we can keep it kind of down here, right, until the very end, then that saves us a lot of energy. So we let the big muscles take over, and then right at the end, then we extend, put the paddle in, right? Just like we're kind of throwing darts, like that, right? So what that looks like when we're actually recovering, right, is